Clinton was poised to become the first female president of the United States, breaking the glass ceiling, running against a real estate tycoon with lots of money, relatively speaking, but clueless as to politics. Yet she suffered a devastating loss and not only stunned her campaign, but the 60 million plus folks who voted for her in the new book, Shattered Inside Hillary Clinton's Doomed Campaign. Jonathan Allen, as well as his co-author, Amy Parnes, deconstructs this campaign and breaks down how Clinton went from being a shoo-in to a wannabe president. This is the book. Jonathan joins us right now. Jonathan, welcome back to the show. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I talk all the time about if you want to understand a shoddy house, raggedy house, let's say walls cracked, crown molding, and it's a gorgeous house, but it's a bad house because of the foundation. That pretty much was the Hillary Clinton deal. Not one time did she ever actually articulate why she wanted to be president. That, to me, reading your book and covering the campaign, seems to be the fundamental problem. It's from the beginning. She had no clear idea why she wanted to be president. It was sort of like, I'm next.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, she could not define why Hillary Clinton, why now, for voters in a way that was easy to digest. You had Bernie Sanders, who basically was saying, let's take money and power away from people who have it and redistribute it a little bit. You had Donald Trump with his new brand of nationalism. Those were easy things for voters to digest. And that's not my conclusion or my co-author's conclusion. Those are the people inside Hillary Clinton's campaign talking about what went wrong from the beginning. One of her senior aides said to us, I would have had a reason for running or I wouldn't have run.
So this is interesting. So it was amazing reading this book, because you all were talking to the folks who were right there, who were in the midst of it. So let's talk about this whole data issue. So last week when she was at the Recode conference, she talked about how, oh my God, the DNC, they had a horrible operation. It was from day one, we had nothing to work with. Yet Robbie Mook, her campaign manager, one of these millennials, okay, 35, 36 years old, totally was a data guy. All he believed in was the data. Everything was the data. He wasn't listening to the ground.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, at some level, he basically made a choice that it was a lot better to try to turn out people who agreed with Secretary Clinton than to try to persuade people who didn't agree with her or were on the fence. And so the more they focused on that group that already agreed with her, the more they alienated people that weren't with her.
But Jonathan, they also, though, didn't really have a real plan to turn those folks out, because they took many of them for granted. They pulled out of Wisconsin. They had no real touch with people in Michigan. They were not putting the resources necessary into the black community. And I get to September 15th, I go on MSNBC and I lay out and I said, if this continues, if Robbie Mook and Podesta does not get their heads out of their iPads and their computers, they are going to lose. The next day, September 16th, Congressional Black Caucus dinner. We're backstage. Congressman Jim Clyburn I was sitting at his table. We go backstage, and then Hillary Clinton is taking photos with people. I tell her to her face, there's intensity on his side, no intensity on your side. I'm having difficulty getting your black surrogates just to come on the air. I'm hearing from black folks in North Carolina, Florida, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and they can't get them. And I'm going, y'all are going to lose. I said, you're going to be a bridesmaid for a second time if your campaign doesn't change this.
And that's really amazing, Roland. I mean, if you think about, she decided she was going to try to recreate the Obama coalition and didn't do the work to get that done. And I mean, I think they knew there was going to be some fall off among African-American voters between Obama and her, but I think they expected it to be a lot less than it ended up being. And they just didn't do the work on the ground. All kinds of states, people were complaining, we don't have literature, people aren't knocking on doors. There's not, this turnout effort isn't there. The persuasion effort isn't there.
They said, the ground game she has is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I think there were a lot of people involved in it, but I mean, the folks on the ground in the states were frustrated. They were frustrated at the resources they were getting. It's a $1 billion campaign where everybody felt like there wasn't another nickel.
So before I go to each panelist with a question, so I got to ask every author, I ask this question. So what was the one, there probably were about 500 in this book, but what was the one moment in your research or reporting where even you went, wow? What was your wow moment?
You know, honestly, I think it was some of the stuff from election night that we found out where President Obama was urging her to concede, and she was resistant to do that because the White House had already decided that she wasn't going to win, and her team was fighting over whether they should wait until the morning and see if some of those states flipped. I think those conversations, which we detail in the book, between the White House aides and her aides, between President Obama and Secretary Clinton, I think those were sort of fascinating moments and really striking moments in terms of bringing out her humanity in ways. I mean, these are tough moments for her where she's being told by President Obama that it's over. And then she has to talk to him after the concession to Donald Trump, and she sort of realizes she's let down herself, she's let her party down, she believes she's let her country down, and she believes she's let Barack Obama down, and these are tough realizations for her. So to me, those are sort of that's the moment in the book that I think was the most, that really hit home the most.
Barbara, question.
Yes. How did you, I was so surprised when I was in, North Carolina about the lack of the ground game. I had heard about it from Florida and people complaining. When you asked about that, what did people say? How did they justify that?
They often said that it was there, right? I mean, it's sort of like there are two tales. There's the one that's going on in Brooklyn in the headquarters where they're like, we've put out all the resources we need to. We have more people than Barack Obama did in some of these states. And then you hear from other people that are in the states and they say, we're not getting what we need. One state director, I think, or one person who's heavily involved in one of the states said to us, they're sending me into war without armor.
Well,
Hold on 1 second. I gotta go to Shannon. Hold on.
When you run a campaign and you're trying to get, let's say, the African American vote, most folks would reach out to ministry and to clergy to try and capture the hearts and minds of folks. Why was the campaign so lacking in that area if this was really a serious intention to win?
That's a good question because it's not like Hillary Clinton's uncomfortable in black churches. I mean, in some ways, I think she feels like she's going home. I mean, her strongest base is black women. So she goes to a black church, and you can see the pictures. I mean, she's comfortable in that space in a way that a lot of politicians, whether they're Democrats, Republicans, whatever, are not. So it's a good question as to why they didn't do more of that. I also think that looking at the African American community as monolithic is a bad plan if you're trying to win votes.
Yep.
I think Donald Trump, even though his message alienated the vast majority of African American voters, I think there were some that said, yeah, what do I have to lose?
Well, no, actually, there was a 9-point gap between black men and black women in 2012, even with Mitt Romney, and there was the same 9-point gap. So 94% of black women voted for Hillary Clinton, but you had 87%. Actually, the number of 85% or so, between 85 and 87 black men who voted for Hillary Clinton. So again, same thing, and there were black men who were appealed by what Trump had to say. Joy, your question.
I wanted to know your opinion of a couple of weeks ago when Hillary Clinton spoke. She talked about what wasn't there from the DNC.
About 60 seconds.
What was your response to that?
She talked about, I'm sorry?
The DNC didn't give her any resources. The DNC was broke.
It's ridiculous. She raised $1 billion.
Yeah.
The problem was not having the problem was not a lack of funds.
Right, right.
Last question, again, about 40 seconds left. It's very simple. What is up with just the inability of her and her staffers to say, look, we screwed up in some critical areas? They keep saying, oh, it was Coleman's, this, that, and the other, but you lose by less than 100,000 votes. If you actually had connections with your people in those 3 states, she's president, regardless of everything else that happened.
I think a lot of it is her unwillingness to show weakness. It's a personal thing. She doesn't like to show weakness. And then some of it is that it protects them all. They don't have to look at what they did wrong if they can blame external factors.
Folks, the book is called Shattered: Inside Hillary Clinton's Doomed Campaign. Jonathan Allen, Amy Parms, we certainly appreciate it, Jonathan. Thanks a bunch. Great read.
My pleasure.
A peaceful protest turned deadly. 37-year-old black man was shot and killed by Baton Rouge police. His hands are in the air, and you still get shot by the cops.
Oh my God, please don't tell me he's dead.
We're not going to let hate define us.
Race is a big part of this.
If truly all lives matter, then all lives need to matter equally. What we require is action. What we require is accountability. We understand that black lives do matter, and we will keep focused on this issue.
NewsOne Now, every weekday morning at 7 on TV1.